In the year 1258, a silence fell over the world's greatest city. Baghdad, the jewel of the Abbasid Caliphate, the beating heart of Islamic civilization, a metropolis of libraries, mosques, and marketplaces, would soon face a storm unlike any it had ever known. For centuries, it had been called the City of Peace. Yet in the winter of that year, peace itself was broken. On its horizon appeared the banners of the Mongols, riders from the far steppes who had carved empires out of shattered kingdoms. Their leader, Hulagu Khan, grandson of the mighty Genghis, had set his gaze upon Baghdad, and in just a few weeks, the city that had once illuminated the world with knowledge would be plunged into fire and ash. This was no ordinary siege. This was the fall of a civilization's heart. To understand the enormity of what was lost, we must first return to Baghdad at its height. Founded in 762 by Caliph al-Mansur, the city became the seat of the Abbasid Caliphate, stretching influence from the Atlantic to the Indus. Its circular design, immense walls, and grand palace symbolized the order of the heavens. Scholars gathered here to debate philosophy, astronomy, and medicine. The House of Wisdom, Beit al-Hikmah, stored countless manuscripts in Arabic, Greek, Persian, and Sanskrit. In its streets, traders from India sold spices, scholars from Byzantium translated Aristotle, and poets recited verses that still echo through history. A Persian traveler once described Baghdad as a paradise on earth. For 5 centuries, it stood as the intellectual and cultural capital of the Islamic world. Yet by the 13th century, cracks had begun to show. The Abbasid caliphs no longer commanded an empire but ruled as figureheads, hemmed in by rival dynasties. The caliph in 1258, al-Mustasim, was a pious man but indecisive, ill-prepared for the storm that approached. That storm came in the form of the Mongol Empire. From the conquests of Genghis Khan in the early 1200s, the Mongols had risen from nomadic horsemen to masters of Eurasia. Hulagu Khan, charged by his brother, the great Khan Merk, to expand Mongol rule into the Islamic heartlands, moved westward with one of the most formidable armies ever assembled. Hulagu's mission was clear: crush the Ismaili assassins of Persia, then bring Baghdad under Mongol authority. The Ismaili strongholds crumbled before him, their mountain fortresses reduced to rubble. Then his gaze shifted to the Abbasid capital. He sent word to Caliph al-Mustasim: submit, open your gates, and acknowledge Mongol supremacy, or face destruction. The caliph, confident in the city's size and reputation, refused. He believed no power could bring Baghdad to its knees. It was a fateful miscalculation. In January 1258, Hulagu's army crossed the Tigris and surrounded Baghdad. The Mongols were no ordinary invaders. Masters of siege warfare, they brought engineers from China and Persia, constructing massive siege towers, catapults, and trebuchets capable of hurling stones and fire. For days, their machines battered the walls of Baghdad. Inside the city, panic spread. The caliph's court was divided. Some urged surrender, others urged resistance. The common people, who had once strolled through the city's gardens and markets, now hid in terror as the ground shook with each Mongol strike. By early February, the walls were breached. The gates of Baghdad fell open, not by surrender, but by the relentless fury of Mongol steel. The sack that followed is remembered as one of the darkest episodes in human history. Mongol soldiers poured into the city, killing without distinction: soldiers, scholars, merchants, women, and children alike. Chroniclers speak of rivers running red with blood. One account by Ibn al-Amid claims nearly 800,000 perished, though others give lower figures. Regardless, the scale of the slaughter was unimaginable. For a week, the city burned. Palaces were looted, mosques desecrated, and markets destroyed. The caliph himself was captured and executed, reportedly rolled into a carpet and trampled by horses so that his blood would not be spilled on the earth, a symbolic act reflecting Mongol superstition. But the most haunting loss was to knowledge. The great libraries of Baghdad, including the House of Wisdom, were thrown into the Tigris. Manuscripts containing centuries of science, philosophy, medicine, and literature were cast into the river. Witnesses say the waters of the Tigris ran black with ink. A river of knowledge turned into a river of mourning. In the aftermath, Baghdad was unrecognizable. The city that had once housed over 1 million people was reduced to ruins. The survivors wandered streets filled with corpses, their mosques silent, their marketplaces shattered. Hulagu, satisfied with his conquest, appointed governors to oversee the smoldering remains. The Islamic world reeled in shock. The caliphate, which for 5 centuries had symbolized the unity of Islam, was no more. It was, wrote one chronicler, as though the heavens had darkened and the stars had fallen from the sky. The Mongols had not merely conquered a city, they had extinguished a civilization's beacon. The long-term consequences of the sack were profound. The Islamic Golden Age, already waning, suffered a mortal blow. Scientific progress, once championed by Abbasid scholars, slowed as centers of learning shifted to Cairo and later Istanbul. Baghdad never regained its status as the unrivaled heart of the Muslim world. The Mongols, though ruthless conquerors, would eventually adopt Islam themselves in Persia and beyond. Yet the memory of 1258 lingered as a scar. Historians debate whether the Mongols' destruction alone ended the Golden Age, or whether political fragmentation and decline had already set the stage. But the sack of Baghdad became a symbol, a warning of what happens when arrogance meets relentless force, and when knowledge is left defenseless. Today, the memory of that destruction still resonates. In modern Iraq, the ruins of Abbasid architecture remind us of the city's past glory. Historians and poets alike recall the ink-stained waters of the Tigris as a metaphor for human loss. For Muslims, it marked the end of the caliphate's central power. For the world, it remains a lesson in the fragility of civilization. Cities may rise with brilliance, but they can fall with terrifying speed. The Mongols' sack of Baghdad stands as a reminder that history is not just about triumphs, but about tragedies that reshape the world. In those few weeks of 1258, one of humanity's greatest centers of knowledge was silenced. Yet its memory endures, not only in chronicles and ruins, but in the very determination of later generations to preserve culture against destruction. As the historian Will Durant once said, civilization is a stream with banks. The stream is sometimes filled with blood, yet always it carries forward. Baghdad was broken, but its story continues to flow through time, urging us never to forget the cost of its fall. This episode was made with great care to bring history alive, not just as a tale of the past, but as a memory for the present. If you value high-quality historical storytelling, your support helps ensure that these voices, long silenced, are heard again.